afternoon, everybody. It's Debbie Evans here, and yes, Rolo's with us. And today we're going to read a chapter from the third book in the Secret Adventures of Rolo series. This is called The Dragon's Pram, and this one's all about how Rolo got his name, or rather, how the sweets that we know and love as Rolos, actually got their name, influenced by this little time-travelling dog. So, this is chapter 13, Rolo and the Chocolate Factory. The floppy-haired boy has history homework to find out what happened in the year 1937. He opened up his laptop and used a search engine to research historic events from that year. They included things like the invention of sellotape, Sir Frank Whittle's testing of the first jet engine, the publication of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, the first BBC broadcast from Wimbledon tennis tournament, and the first 999 emergency telephone call. He was telling the smiley lady all of these interesting facts, and she said, "I seem to remember my mum telling me that she was 6 years old when Rolo sweets first appeared in the shops. That would have been 1937. You know, the chocolate-covered toffee sweets in tubes, always wrapped in golden foil." "Of course I know, Mum. They are the sweets Rolo is named after because of his toffee and chocolate-covered face." I was pretending to be asleep, stretched out under the dining room table with my head on my paws, but with an ear up, listening to this conversation. I wanted to shout out, "Actually, floppy-haired boy, you're wrong. The sweets were named after me," but of course I couldn't make him hear me. So instead, I will share the story with you. The year is indeed 1937, and Athelstan has sent me via the time tunnel to a chocolate factory. I didn't have any tubby corgis with me, nor a fire-breathing dragon, not even my little Jack Russell friend Chickpea. It was just yours truly, so you will have to take my word for what happened. I emerged from the time tunnel in a vast kitchen filled with the wonderful aromas of melting chocolate. My nose was twitching with excitement. I hid under a big vat and filled my nostrils with the mouth-watering scent. There is nothing quite like it in the whole world. A new lady had arrived to join the workforce. She introduced herself as Reenie to the others. The bossiest of the ladies started explaining to Reenie about chocolate production. Only the best quality cocoa beans were used in this factory. "Where do the cocoa beans come from?" asked Reenie, putting on her apron and tying back her hair for hygiene purposes. "Originally from Mexico," the bossy lady said, "but now there are cocoa plantations in Ceylon, Java, West Africa and Brazil. Ever seen a cocoa pod? They're long and dangly with either red or yellow colours. That's where the beans grow until they are ready for harvesting." "We all have to listen to Maud's lecture when we arrive here," whispered one of the ladies to Reenie. "She'll tell you how the chocolate's processed next." I listened fascinated from beneath one of the shiny stainless steel work surfaces. First we tipped the beans on this trundling conveyor belt and sort them by hand, picking out any irregular beans or anything that shouldn't be in there, bits of pod and stalks and so on, continued Maud. Then we roast them over these giant heaters, which brings out the rich flavour, the scent of which is easily recognisable as chocolate. The roasted cocoa beans have a very thin, papery shell around them, which needs to be removed. So at this stage, the beans are cracked open and the light shells are blown away with fans, a process known as winnowing, leaving behind pieces of pure cocoa bean known as nibs. I wondered to myself whether this was where the expression "his nibs" came from, as it was a popular saying at this time. The nibs are ground with stone rollers, and then the full cream milk and pure refined sugar are added. The whole lot is mixed into a thick paste and then melted in giant pans whilst being constantly stirred. This is when extra cocoa butter is added. The kneading and mixing is known as refining, and this is a very important stage in chocolate making. This is the stage we're at right now. She stopped in front of the largest of the pans. Here ends the lesson, whispered Ethel. We get to take home any misshapes, she added. My mouth was watering. All this talk of chocolate and the overpowering scent was driving this little dog crazy. I don't care much for chocolate, said the newcomer. The other women looked at Renee in amazement and disbelief. I watched the factory women with their hair scraped off their faces and tucked away under nets, wearing white overalls and pinafores to keep their everyday clothes clean. They were all laughing and joking as they added large quantities of ingredients to a smaller pan and swirled the mixture, releasing even more delicious sugary smells as they stirred with big wooden spoons. Every stir released a fresh burst of exciting, mouth-watering aroma into the kitchen. Butter was melted, sugar was caramelised, syrup bubbled and milk was added. This was surely toffee. A siren sounded in the factory and I forgot myself for a moment and did what comes naturally when I hear a loud noise. I started barking. There was so much noise from the hissing of the steam-powered machinery driving the conveyor belts that luckily nobody heard me. This siren seemed to signal it was time for a tea break. A trolley appeared at the end of the big kitchen and the factory workers turned off the gas jets under the copper pans. They swarmed around the tea trolley, jostling for a place in the queue, and were still laughing and chatting as they piled sugar and milk into white china mugs, which they then filled with steaming tea poured from the big shiny urn. I could see there were also biscuits piled onto a plate. Mind if I have a fig roll? Said Renee, helping herself to a strange oblong biscuit with dark filling. I was more interested in the big pans of chocolate and toffee, now cooling and left unattended. I crept out from behind the chocolate pan and edged my way to the one containing toffee. Keeping one eye on the tea-drinking workers, I put my paws up on the side and leaned in. I just needed to lean in far enough to stick my nose into the warm toffee for a tiny taste. I'm just going to show you the drawing there, Chantal's picture, Rolo leaning into the pan. Stealthily, I got back down on all fours and crept to the chocolate pan as if drawn by a magnet, licking my lips and hoping to repeat the tasting manoeuvre. But this was a bigger pan and I had to get right up on the side of it and perch before I leant over. Just a little bit further, just a little taste. Splosh! The next thing I knew, I was flailing about in the molten chocolate and frantically doggy paddling to try to keep my head above the gooey brown mass, which was threatening to engulf me. The sides of the copper pan were so sheer and shiny, there was no way I was going to get out. I don't usually bark when I'm trapped or lost, but I did manage to let out a little whimper. Luckily for me, tea break was over and the women quickly returned to their posts, and at once I was discovered, chocolate poured. Here, Ethel, over here, quick, look, there's some kind of animal swimming in our chocolate, said Maud. Thank goodness they'd noticed me moving in the copper pan. Oh no, we'll have to spoil that batch and start all over again, said Ethel. But we haven't got time to start a new batch. Management want the new sweet ready to get today, reminded Maud. Never mind that, ladies. Can you please get me out? What is it anyway, a rat? Said another voice. Bloomin' cheek, I thought. What are you doing, Maud? Be careful, it might be dangerous. Maud picked up a couple of tea towels and wrapped them tightly round each hand, and then she leant in and hoiked me out by the tail and unceremoniously dumped me on the stainless steel worktop, which was meant for the cooling of confectionery. Why, it's a little terrier, she said in disbelief. I must have been quite a sight, standing there foursquare and dripping puddles of chocolate, which I might add was beginning to harden at an alarming rate as it cooled and set around my shaking body. Just show you Chantal's drawing there for this illustration. Oh, bless him, he must have had quite a fright in there, poor little chap. Ethel grabbed another cloth and tried to get the chocolate off me. The others soon joined in, and they thought it was a huge game, all these hands chipping off the hardening chocolate shell. Now I know what a chocolate Easter bunny feels like when children break it into little pieces. I wonder how he got in here, said the newcomer, Reenie, looking around. Finally, they started scrubbing away at my face. Steady on, ladies. This was the last straw. A chocolate dog. What a great idea for a novelty product. We should tell management, said Ethel. Nah, it'll never catch on. Who would ever want to eat an animal-shaped chocolate, said Maud. She went back to trying to remove my chocolate covering. It won't come off, said Maud, picking at my face. Here, let me have a go, said Ethel, setting to work vigorously with a damp cloth. Oh, I think that's the pattern of his face. He's supposed to have those brown and black markings, said a new voice. This was Beryl, obviously the more intelligent of the bunch. The ladies hooted with laughter. What's your name then, little dog, said Maud, when my usual handsome features were restored, finally free from extra chocolate. I couldn't tell them, but Beryl noticed my collar. He's got a little name tag. She turned it over and read aloud. It says, my name is Rolo. Well, that's a funny name. I've never heard of one of them, said Ethel. Our Stan's got one just like him, and he's called Nipper. You know, like the one on the record label, the little dog leaning into a gramophone. I heard footsteps approaching and looked towards the direction of the sound. A man came into the kitchen at the tea trolley end, wearing a flat cap and brown overall, carrying a clipboard. He had a pencil stub behind his ear and an air of great self-importance. Now then, ladies, I hope you're not having an extended tea break, he said. Uh-oh, we'd better hide you from Bert, whispered Beryl, and the women all stood in a row in front of me. I sat still on the worktop and started licking my paws. Ethel threw a tea towel over me. This was a great game. If he sees that little dog in here, they'll close the production and the launch of the new suite will be delayed. The bosses won't be very happy and we won't get our bonuses, hissed Beryl to the others. Larks, I need mine for one of them new-fangled vacuum cleaners, said Maud. Why are you all standing about? What's going on here? Said the man, looking suspiciously at the line of women standing by the cooling table. Nothing, Bert. We're ready for the next stage. Chocolate and toffee are both ready, said Beryl, hoping to avert attention from the work surface. From underneath the tea towel, I heard the man telling the workers that the new moulds were ready for the chocolate to be dipped in, and as soon as the chocolate set, the molten toffee would be poured into the little chocolate buckets, and a final layer of chocolate would be added to the top, sealing the toffee inside. These would then be cooled, tipped out upside down and stacked. What, not packed in flat trays in the usual way then? Queried Maud. No, the small stack will be wrapped in gold foil and covered with a paper tube. It's a new idea and cheaper than packing in boxes, said Bert, as he held up a piece of gold foil between thumb and forefinger to demonstrate. He put it down on the work surface and the foil blew onto the floor. No one seemed to notice. Very nice, I'm sure, said Beryl. What are these sweets going to be called then, Bert? We haven't got a name for them yet. It needs to be something short and punchy. Management are scratching their heads in a meeting right now. If they don't come up with something today, the launch will be called off, and you know what that means, ladies. He paused dramatically. Don't suppose any of you have any bright ideas? There was a deathly hush while the workers contemplated losing their bonuses and any hope of owning new electrical appliances or going on family holidays to the seaside, when Ethel piped up, "What about Rolo?" "Brilliant," said Maud, clapping her hands with glee. Everyone started laughing and Bert agreed at once that it was a good, catchy name and would easily fit on the wrapper, and he would put it to the management straight away. If the powers that be upstairs like the name, the design team can get to work on a brand design at once and the launch of the product won't be delayed after all. Well done, ladies, he said. Bert left the kitchen with his clipboard and I stayed very still under my tea towel. When he was safely out of range, the The women uncovered me and made a big fuss of me, stroking me, ruffling my ears and covering me with kisses. I thought it best to leave them at this point in case one of them tried to take me home. There was further mention of Stan and Nipper. I needed to get back to my era pronto. I bent down to receive the piece of golden foil. As I journeyed through the time tunnel, I couldn't help wondering whether the first batch of Rolos had any white dog hairs in them, and if they had, whether anyone had actually noticed. Food hygiene in the 1930s probably wasn't as strict as it is now. The sweets were a huge success and are still packaged in the same way to this very day, proving just as popular as when they were invented. I gave Yulia the little piece of gold foil from the packaging design, and she twisted it into a dainty goblet and said she would keep it forever. I'd like to have brought back some of the first Rolos for the smiley lady and floppy-haired boy, but how would I explain them to my people? I didn't think 80-year-old chocolate would taste too good anyway, probably be a bit white and blotchy. So you see, little pup, you have made your mark on history after all, laughed Athelstan when I told him what had happened. But he did caution me about eating chocolate, as dogs are not supposed to eat any dairy foods for health reasons. Later that night, curled up in my basket, I could still taste a little bit of chocolate in between the pads of my paws. It would be another 20 years before chocolate bunnies made their first appearance at Easter and reindeers at Christmas, and to think that I was the original chocolate dog. So that's the end of that chapter from the third book, and Rolo's gone to sleep. He obviously enjoyed me telling about his adventures in history, and we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. And this video will be posted to Rolo's Facebook page, and it will also be on my YouTube channel. That's my name, Debbie Evans, so you can watch it again. Thank you very much, and I hope you join us again tomorrow afternoon. Goodbye.